Hi everyone, my name is Noah. Tell me, have you ever seen fairy tale creatures with your own eyes? I used to think they weren't real too, but then something happened to me that got me thinking. Subscribe to the channel and let me tell you everything. I was studying robotics in my first year of college. It would seem that I had a great future ahead of me. However, it wasn't all roses. The thing is, I wasn't blessed with good looks, and I wasn't that great at talking to girls either. That upset me. That's why I dedicated all of my free time to studying and my favorite hobby, reading fantasy books and playing Lord of the Rings role-playing games. Don't think I was some kind of outcast. I even had a best friend, Sarah. She was in the same fandom as me, and we studied in the same department. One day, my parents decided to surprise me. They rented a beach house and thought it would be a great idea if our whole family relaxed and spent time together. But I had other plans. Sarah and I had been planning to visit a cosplaying shop that had recently opened in our town that weekend. But there was nothing I could do. I had to pretend to be excited and get ready for the trip. When we finally reached the place, my parents immediately set me to work. I had to prepare everything for a picnic. I was busy until late that night. Finally, we sat down by the fire, just like hobbits after a long journey. We had a barbecue and roasted marshmallows for dessert. After we'd gone to our rooms to sleep, I suddenly remembered. I was supposed to give an important talk at college on Monday, but I hadn't even begun to write it, even though that was my chance to finally impress my classmates. Maybe some cool girl would even notice me. I took my laptop out of my backpack, but oh no! There was no Wi-Fi and no connection. I felt uneasy. I couldn't be late with my talk. I decided that I would get up early and take a bus back to the city. The next morning, I woke up and ran into the kitchen to cook breakfast. I took out the plates, then the bacon, eggs, and cheese from the refrigerator. Reached for the bread, and out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something weird outside the window. A girl was sitting on the shore. I was stunned. She had thick, bright red hair, just like Ariel from The Little Mermaid. Wait a minute. It seems she even had a bright purple tail instead of legs. It couldn't be real. Of course, I immediately rushed out to get a closer look at the mermaid. I walked very quietly as to not frighten her. However, when I was only a few meters away, I accidentally stepped on a dry branch. There was a crunch. The girl turned around and looked at me, startled. You have no idea how beautiful she was. As soon as I opened my mouth, she jumped into the water and disappeared. I must have scared her terribly. Noah, what are you doing here? I heard behind me. It was my mother who was coming towards me. I've just seen a real mermaid right here, I told her. My mom looked at me with a smile, thinking I'd finally lost it from reading too much fantasy novels. She simply went back inside. I decided to stay and wait for the beautiful mermaid to come back. Hour after hour passed, and still there was no sign of her. I was even beginning to wonder if she had been real in the first place, or if I simply hadn't gotten enough sleep. Even if that mermaid really existed, why would I think she would be interested in me? I was not the perfect Prince Eric from the fairy tale. After another hour, I realized that she wasn't coming back after all, and that I should give up as there was no point in waiting for her, and go back to the city to write my college speech. At least that way, I would maybe catch the interest of a real girl and not a mythical creature. I quickly packed up, told my parents that I had some urgent business, and jumped on the first bus to the city. As soon as the connection was back, I immediately saw dozens of notifications. Where are you? What happened? Call me ASAP. Sarah had sent me a bunch of texts and seemed genuinely distressed. Sarah, there's no time to explain. Let's meet at our favorite cafe, I told her in a voice message. I had to tell her what had happened, or I would have burst with impatience. As soon as we met, I immediately told my friend about everything that happened that day. Sarah was absolutely thrilled. I knew she would believe me. Sarah, I think I'm in love, I said shyly. However, for some reason, she did not support me, but only turned away, irritated. You don't even know her, Sarah replied. I tried to tell her how I felt, but she interrupted me and said that we were running late for the cosplay shop. Right, how could I have forgotten? I decided to take a walk to the shop before I sat down to write my speech. I couldn't believe my eyes when we walked in. It was the dream of every Tolkien fan. You could find everything there. Orc, hobbit, and elf costumes, Middle-earth maps, replicas of the Ring of Power, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Sarah and I walked around the store as if spellbound, when I suddenly noticed something bright at the end of the row. There was no doubt about it. I'd seen that red hair earlier that day. "Sarah, I think it's that mermaid," I whispered to my friend. While I was staring dumbly at the stranger, she suddenly turned around, and I couldn't believe it. That was the very same girl standing in front of me. I felt completely lost. Suddenly, she smiled and came up to me. At that moment, I felt so excited, I almost vibrated out of my skin. "Hi, I'm Rebecca. I think we've met before," she said, flashing me a dazzling smile. I mumbled something in response, still unsure as to what was going on. "I'm sorry I startled you this morning," Rebecca added cheerfully. It turned out that she had decided to have an unusual photo shoot while cosplaying as a mermaid, thinking no one lived nearby. That's why, when she saw me, she got scared and jumped into the water. She was afraid of getting fined for trespassing. I couldn't believe my own ears. Of course, I was a little upset that the mermaid turned out to be fake, but since Rebecca was just like me, maybe we would be a perfect match for each other. As if reading my thoughts, she smiled and said, "Let's exchange phone numbers. I want to make it up to you for ruining your morning." Oh, if she knew that it had been the best morning of my life. We exchanged numbers, and all the way home, I talked Sarah's ear off about Rebecca. I had forgotten all about my important speech. I didn't need those college girls to like me anyway. None of them were even half as beautiful as my red-haired mermaid. Rebecca texted me that very night. Can you believe it? We chatted for several hours. It turned out that we had a lot in common. She also loved fantasy novels and dreamt of becoming a famous TikTok cosplayer. She was especially impressed by the fact that I was a future robotics engineer. She dreamt of choosing that field as well, but did not like to study much. Rebecca told me that grades were completely irrelevant. The most important thing was what was in your head. But the problem was, her parents demanded that she get perfect grades. Luckily, Rebecca had me now. I was sure that if I helped her with her studies, she would definitely fall in love with me. That's exactly what happened. A week later, Rebecca and I started going out. I was over the moon. We spent all of our free time together and were the perfect couple. However, Sarah got really upset with me because I ignored her and even stopped talking to me in college. Whatever, what kind of a friend was she anyway if she couldn't even be happy for me? Anyway, I had been seeing Rebecca for a few months now, when something strange happened to her. She canceled our dates several times, saying she was busy with something important. I didn't think much of it. However, it began to happen more and more often. At some point, we stopped seeing each other at all. We only ever talked about our studies. She would send me her assignments for seminars and ask for help. I was worried. What if something terrible was going on in Rebecca's life, and she simply didn't know how to talk to me about it? I decided to prepare a romantic surprise for her. I'd heard girls love it, so one day I went to the best candy store in town, bought a box of delicious cupcakes, and rode my scooter to Rebecca's place. I imagined how happy she would be at the sight of a gift and how she would kiss me. I was so busy daydreaming that I missed the red traffic light and didn't see a car rushing at me. It bashed into me. I hit my head on the asphalt, and everything went dark. I didn't remember anything after that. When I came to, I heard a strange beeping sound. It was impossibly hard to open my eyes, so for a while, I just laid there and listened to the sounds around me. Wait, what was that? There was some strange collar on my neck, which I couldn't even move. Noah, you're awake! I suddenly heard Sarah's soft voice. I finally found the strength to open my eyes. Everything around me was white. Obviously, I was in the hospital. Oh, Noah, I'm so glad, Sarah said with tears in her eyes. She told me that I had been in a terrible accident and had been in a coma for a week. The doctors had told my parents that there was less hope for my recovery each day I wasn't waking up. But they still stayed in my room the whole time and never gave up hope. Sarah only took their place in the evening so that my mom and dad could go home and change. I gathered my strength and asked my friend, "Where's Rebecca?" At that moment, Sarah's face turned sad. She looked at me with even more sympathy. "Haven't you realized yet that she's only been using you to get help with her studies?" she asked. I realized that I had been a naive dreamer that whole time. Rebecca never cared about me, and I had chosen her over my best friend. It was only when I looked into Sarah's eyes that I began to doubt whether we were just friends. Maybe happiness has been right next to me all the while. I'm completely lost and have no idea what to do. Write in the comments down below. Should I try my luck and ask Sarah to go out with me? Or will I just risk ruining our friendship?